Welcome back to the Against the Cage podcast. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Erich Richter and Scott Fontana. If you like watching MMA content and hearing us banter about all the latest news and everything in between, make sure to give us a subscribe and a like on this video. Guys, this weekend, it's a pay-per-view. We've got Belal Muhammad defending his welterweight title against Jack Della Maddalena, but initially this fight was supposed to be Shavkat Rakhmonov at the time, and very well still be, in some people's eyes, the number one contender. A few things have happened in welterweight since then. But now that this is our main event, Belal versus JDM, Scott, let's start with you. What do you think about how this fight eventually played out? Are you satisfied with this result that we have for this weekend's main event?
You know, given the fact that Shavkat was not healthy enough for UFC 315, I think this is perfectly fine. I think we've been waiting for Jack Della Maddalena to get to this point for a little while. You almost wonder if maybe he missed out on taking a stiffer test to get to this point in between. But I don't think anyone is dissatisfied here. So, let's take it. This is making the best of maybe a second choice.
I hear you, Scott. I agree that this is a good second option. I think that pending how this plays out, right? If Belal wins this fight and is out for several months afterwards, I think it could get a little hairy having to wait for a Shavkat Belal fight. So I think that that's a little bit less than ideal. But overall, I think Jack Della, it's a wildly competitive fight in terms of the odds. Jack Della opened as a plus 210 underdog. Those odds have crashed. He's down to plus 140. Could even be pick'em by the time that we get to fight time. So really interesting odds movement. A lot of people backing Jack Della. I was in Miami when he fought Gilbert Burns, and he didn't look great for 2 rounds. And then he, ended up pulling a rabbit out of the hat, getting the KO in the last minute of the third round. So I'm interested to see how Jack Della does here. In the early moments, Belal's got the, serious forward pressure, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later when I talk about, this fight from a betting perspective. But that serious forward pressure is the big issue for Jack coming into this fight. Belal has suffocated every fighter he's fought on his rise here with that heavy pressure forward, the grappling, the jab, the volume. It's suffocating. So I'm interested to see how he plays it. I know that the UFC would love to see Jack Della win by knockout. Now, I always love talking about what I think the promotion wants. I think the promotion would love to see Jack Della knock Belal out, but I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see if the UFC gets their wish. But I would venture to guess that was the reason for the matchmaking, is they wanted a striker that could potentially get the finish there on the feet.
And to add to that, Eric, I think raised some good points here, but just the fact that Jack Della has not really had a lot of these tests, like I sort of alluded to before. We haven't seen him fight past round 3. We haven't seen him against that top 5 in their prime welterweights here. I don't know if he is ready for this. Maybe he is, but we haven't seen, I think, enough evidence to feel really good about that.
Yeah, wasn't he supposed to fight Leon Edwards before this in the main event?
He was, yeah. Sean Brady comes in and takes that fight and leapfrogs him actually in the rankings. So, but JDM still is in the top 5 of the rankings, even with Sean being leapfrogged in. But that
would have been nice to see, no doubt. But it is what it is. I think Jack Della has a good shot here. Obviously, the betting odds would favor him. I'm not favor him, but definitely more likely than it was initially projected by the odds makers.
Yeah, and one thing you guys, Scott, you mentioned this, is that, JDM hasn't necessarily been tested as much as a typical title challenger would. I think it's fair to say that Gilbert Burns was his toughest date or the best win on his record till now. But if there's anything that fight proved, it's that he finds a will to win, or a way to win. At least he did in that fight. So I don't think that he's going to completely suffocate under the pressure and quit, for instance. I think he's got the heart of someone who could pull a rabbit out of a hat, as you mentioned, Eric. One thing that I do want to at least mention before we talk about some of the other aspects of this fight is, to me at least, and I've been hearing this a lot from other people as well, is it kind of seems like Islam Makhachev is sort of looming over this fight, similar to how like Shavkat Rakhmonov could as a number one contender. But this fight really does seem like it is going to narrate what happens next for Islam Makhachev. And if you're someone that wants to watch Ilya versus Islam at International Fight Week, you kind of have to be rooting for Belal Muhammad in this situation, as it's very seems like it's the case. Islam will not fight Belal at welterweight, so Belal's kind of been known to be a champion that has not had the same kind of support that a typical champion would. People say it's due to his fighting style. I'll leave that up to other people to decide. But this could be the most support that he has in a fight, and I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting. Another aspect about this fight, we talked about this last week, you and I, Scott. Ian Machado Gary is weighing in as the backup fighter in case the guys miss the weight on the scale tomorrow or if something else happens in between. Eric, I think you might have some thoughts on this. You're shaking your head. Let us know.
This has never worked out for anybody. We've seen Tony Ferguson do this, where he just weighs. He fought 2 weeks ago, and now he's going to cut weight again down to 170. Stupid. This is a stupid move. I don't care if he's getting his show money. This is stupid. It's bad for his body. Look, I'm not going to tell him what to do with his body. From my perspective, in my opinion, I think this is nonsense. I don't know what Ian Gary's doing. This is probably his biggest mistake strategically in his career in terms of how he's preparing and stuff. Like, why would he even want to take this fight on? I guess he could want to take this fight on short notice. But if Jack Della were to miss weight, what's he gonna be like in terms off of fighting 2 weeks ago, a hard fought battle where he looked awful in the 5th round. He looked terrible in the 5th round, and now he's gonna cut weight again 2 weeks later, jump in, and then what? He's gonna fight Belal Muhammad as what, a plus 1,000 underdog? Ridiculous, stupid move. No reason to do it. But maybe it's just about playing the politics of it, and I'm willing to do the UFC a favor by weighing in, and maybe I'll be in their good graces at some point. I don't know. It just seems really dumb.
Scott, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts. I've got some, but if you want to go first.
I guess I'm not quite as passionately against it as Eric is. I don't reach that level. I don't think it's a very good risk if he does get that fight. Hey, he's got a championship opportunity. He's also young enough that realistically he could still get back to that. I don't think it's going to destroy his career if he manages to do this. There probably is some political aspect to that, right? I don't think it's the most nuts thing. We've heard positives and negatives of being the backup fighter. Corey Sandhagen, who just won the other day, not very interested in being the backup fighter unless he gets a guaranteed title shot out of it. That I can understand. You definitely want something really, really concrete after that. Hey, I'm doing this. More than money, I'm getting that opportunity. But you know what? If he looks at it as, hey, I get an opportunity to maybe fight for a title, and if I don't, I get some money just for weighing in. It's almost a can't lose situation. It is not quite, but it's almost there.
So really quick, and Jake, I know you have something to say, but really quick, I just wanted to just say that I don't have an issue with anyone being a backup fighter. My issue is with Ian Gary having fought 2 weeks ago, losing the 5th round to Carlos Praches, nearly getting finished. That's my issue. And we saw Tony Ferguson do it when a fight pulled out. I forget exactly who he was fighting. A fight pulled out. I was like, I'm going to still make the weight. And then he fought like 2 weeks later. He got annihilated. So, and look, you can say what you want about Tony Ferguson. He does weird stuff too. But that is my issue. He looked so bad 2 weeks ago, and then he's going to just jump in here and cut weight again. Stupid move.
So I can understand that, and that actually kind of plays into what I was going to say. I feel like, and it is a bit of a risk, but the odds are that this fight will go on as intended, and we've alluded to this, is that this could just be a move to get in the good graces, and you make a few bucks on the side too, right? One thing that I am curious about, though, is if someone does miss weight, namely JDM, is it a case where it has to be like a bad weight miss? I'm not sure what the precedent for this is. For like, if he misses by like 0.1 pounds, are they throwing Ian like, up, you're up, buddy?
I imagine it's going to be up to the UFC's discretion here, but in theory, they want a championship fight. And if they cannot get a championship fight, if someone misses by a half pound, they're not fighting for the title. They have to hit 170 or below. You can't even get that full pound of a grace. So realistically, if you see Jack Della Maddalena show up and he can't hit lower than 170 and a half, and Ian Gary hits 170, it's Gary versus Bilal. That's what we're getting.
That's a big risk. That's a bigger risk than what I was thinking. Because now that you put it that way, it's true. They do want a championship fight to happen. They want high stakes. If only one guy can win the title or at least retain it, that's not as interesting of a sell. Plus, Ian Gary, you could really say at this point he is a bigger name than JDM. So I feel like the UFC probably would be like, all right, get in there, buddy. But listen, Ian Gary, he has all the confidence in himself in the world. He truly believes that he is the best in the world. So I don't think he's too worried about it. But that's how fighters work.
There's a lot of self-esteem in Ireland, I've noticed.
Yeah. And especially a Irish MMA fighter. We know how that goes. Okay, so with that to wrap up this main event, we have a new segment that we're going to be bringing into some of our pay-per-views. And actually, you know what, Scott? I'm just going to let you carry this from here because you eloquently explained it to us earlier, and I think you'll do a good job.
Right, so we're debuting a new feature that we're calling the Sports Entertainment Rating. And in short, this is something we're kind of using to all of our panelists are going to do this. We're all going to rate the championship fights and the pay-per-view main events. Let's say if they don't have a championship on the line, we're going to rate them in two categories. The sports category, which will essentially evaluate, is this a best of the best fight on a 1 to 5 star scale? And we'll do the same thing with entertainment, which will be, hey, where do we feel about this? Like how much of the hype, whether it's for the out of the cage stuff or whether it's for the entertainment value of this fight, how much is this entertaining to us? Also on a 1 to 5 scale. We'll add those two numbers together. That'll give us a number out of 10. Each person has their own, and then we'll average that out, and that will become the Against the Cage sports entertainment rating.
Alrighty, there we go.
This is gonna be fun.
Yes. Okay, you know what? I'll go first.
You should.
Yeah, let's do it. Alrighty. So for our main event, Bilal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena, from a sporting aspect, like a competitive perspective, as you described, Scott, out of 5, it's out of 5, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And no half stars. We can do full stars.
Yes.
We got this.
I am going to give this one a 3 out of 5. The reason for that is, I mean, even before Sean Brady went into the top 5, JDM was in there, So if you're a top 5 guy, you're in the conversation. Like we said before, I think he could have used one more fight to get in there, but I think it's not unheard of that, a guy in this similar position gets a title shot. Could it be better? Of course. Is it, pound for pound, number 1 versus number 2? No, that would be like a 5 out of 5. I think this is a very solid 3 from a competitive perspective. As far as an entertainment perspective, I'm going to give this one a 3 as well. Reasoning for that is there's definitely some intrigue, but I could see Bilal Muhammad having like a pretty clear path to victory if he fights the way that he has before, and if that ends up going to a decision. These are the kind of conversations that have kind of been had before. And also, I think we were all really hoping to see Shavkat in the position that JDM's at. So that kind of the fight itself in a vacuum might be a little bit better from an entertainment perspective, but because we had something that was better, it kind of, dampens it a little bit. But what do you guys think? Eric, I'll let you go.
Scott, did you want to go really quick?
Oh, yeah.
No, I want you.
Okay, so all right. I'm going to just break down my rankings really quick. Anything that involves Bilal Muhammad is not going to get higher than a 3 out of me, no matter who the matchup is, in terms of entertainment. All due respect to Bilal Muhammad. I have no beef with him. It's just never going to happen for me. So when you break down the matchup, I think that it could be a pretty competitive matchup. I'll go with 3 on the competitive side and the matchup itself. But in terms of entertainment value, I think a 2 could even be generous. So I'm gonna go 2 on entertainment. Nothing with Bilal Muhammad's gonna be overly entertaining. If a 5 is John Jones, Tom Aspinall, or Conor McGregor, Khabib, I mean, if you're using that scale, it's like a one. But I'm gonna go two. But in terms of the matchup, I think that it could be interesting stylistically. So I'm gonna go with a three. I would go 2.5 if I was allowed to use decimals, but I'll go three. So five
So
total.
what you've got a five, you got a six. I'm going with a four from a sporting aspect. I'm going just a little higher because I do think we have somebody who, like I said, I feel comfortable with as a second option. This isn't reaching too deep into the pocket to get a challenger for this championship. I think this is perfectly fine. I'm going to call that a four. I'm going to go with a three from an entertainment perspective because I can actually see ways where this fight isn't just like a grind fest or something like that. I think that there will be some competitiveness on the feet as well from both parties. So I'm going to go with a three from that, which my total gets to a seven. Averaged out with you guys, we are giving it a collective 6 out of 10.
And this is the entertainment or sporting aspect, or just in general?
That's our total rating.
Okay, got it. It's one
Yeah,
rounded
that's
out
the against the
rating.
cage rating. It's
Okay.
an average of 6
Okay.
for this fight.
I think that's pretty fair, I would say. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and we're gonna do one
You
more
want to
because
do
we
the
got
co-main
another.
event?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we got another fight. We'll talk about that one later,
we'll
right?
get to that
We
one at
gotta
the
get to that
end.
first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a perfect segue. As I mentioned before, we had for our main event, we had a fight where it was supposed to be a clear number one contender taking on for the title. In our co-main event, we do have that. Manon Fiorot is taking on Valentina Shevchenko, of course, champion again. Manon, clear number one contender. I think no one's arguing that, right? But for the first time in a while, this is only Valentina's second time since 2016. She's an underdog in this fight, which I'm not used to. Eric, you're the guy who talks to us about all the numbers and the odds and the pluses and the minuses. Why do you think this is? Why is Valentina an underdog in this fight?
Valentina's just getting a little older. She's been in the game for a long time. She, debuted in the UFC back in, I believe, 2016. We're going on 10 years in the UFC here. This is the second time that she was an underdog. The last time, obviously, was against Alexa Grasso. She was an underdog for the last fight. Again, she's getting a little older, losing her athleticism a little bit, losing her speed a little bit. She's super talented, super technical. Her skills are off the chart. She's losing a little bit athletically, and that happens in this sport. That's something that you hear me talk about a lot. Scott, if you want, I'll tell you because I believe that you watched this fight. Valentina was the last time before Alexa Grasso, the last time that she was an underdog was back in 2016, UFC on Fox, headliner Holly Holm versus Valentina Shevchenko. That was, I believe, right after Holly had knocked out Ronda Rousey. So that tells you how long Valentina has been in the game. Stylistically in this fight, I think it's super interesting. We'll see, if Shevchenko can compete on the ground the way that she usually does, I think that's a really big piece of this. It's expected to go to decision. It's about minus 300 to go the distance. But if she can compete on the ground like she typically does, this is going to be a little bit of a harder opponent on the mat. I think that's the key to the whole thing. And if she doesn't have the speed that she usually does, she'll probably lose. She opened as a pick'em, and now it's about plus 120. So that's what we're looking at in this co-main. It's gonna be interesting.
The tricky thing though with this fight is the fact that Furo has shown a very strong ability to decide where the fight is going. When she wants it down, she can take it down, and she doesn't go down easily. She's very happy to keep it up, work that kickboxing game that we've seen from her. But Shevchenko has a very well-rounded game, easily the most well-rounded game that she'll have faced to this point. So I think there's some actual real fascinating ways this fight can go. I know sometimes people get a little sour on women's MMA, unfortunately, but for this particular fight, I think there's a lot of dimension here. I'm very curious how either of these women can fare.
All I know is Manon beat Erin Blanchfield, and I can never forgive her for that. So I'm rooting for Valentina. Okay, so now that we've actually, Eric, real quick, I do want to get your thoughts on this because I remember we talked about this a little bit before. What do you think about this fight being the co-main event, Valentina taking on Manon?
I have, and look, I'm not the promoter, right? I'll put that on the record. And they can run their business however they want. However, in the past, they used to do main events where fight night main events were often title fights for lower weight classes. I would like to bring that back. I don't think this needs to be a co-main event on a pay-per-view. I don't think that's something that fans are begging to see. I think that on a fight night, you would draw huge numbers on cable to lead them into a pay-per-view rather than trying to sell this as a massive money-making fight. So for me, I think it's quality as hell, and that this fight should be the main event of a fight night rather than I don't think this is about the fight being bad. I think we need to elevate the fight nights more. I think we need to elevate those cards. This would elevate a fight night dramatically. Nobody would be making fun of fight nights if there was this fight on a main event for a fight night, or if you did a flyweight a flyweight title fight as a fight night main event. Mighty Mouse was always on fight nights. He was never a pay-per-view draw, and Dana White had said that it's because he wasn't a draw, which I didn't agree with at the time. However, I think that if you can do that, it just elevates the product, elevates the fight nights, good for cable numbers, good for eyeballs. Use what you have at ESPN, the eyeballs that you are getting on primetime TV. It'd be way better used there. That's just my call.
I'm gonna push back on you, Eric. Actually, and look, your heart is in the right place because I mean, we talk about this all the time. I'm a big proponent of strengthening the fight nights. I think we should absolutely have solid, quote unquote, free cards. They're absolutely not free because you got to subscribe to all these things, right? If they're on ABC, they're free. That's the only time.
Only going to get more expensive.
Exactly, but I'm pushing back because number one, I think especially the last couple of weeks, we have seen what they can do with fight nights. They can put together some very compelling, deep, fun, topped off pretty well fight nights as well without needing to get that title fight. You've seen in the last couple of years, especially, the UFC has absolutely stacked their pay-per-views, and that is 100% by design. You look at these cards, it's absolutely clear that there are so many title fights on all the time. Do I love that they have to have two title fights on these cards? Not necessarily. But I'm very okay with getting my money's worth. If they're going to charge me $80 to buy the pay-per-view, give me a couple title fights, give me a couple. I understand the justification there.
I would not call this fight card stacked at all. I think that for $80, I would say that this is. I wouldn't call this this would probably be a bottom two pay-per-view of the year. I would hope. No disrespect to Bilal. I don't. He's not a draw. The ticket sales are really down for this, and that's something that we're probably going to talk about. But I don't think that there's as much interest in this fight card as there would be, and I don't think Valentina versus Fioro elevates it any specific amount. I think it would really elevate a fight night. That's just my opinion, though. Obviously, a little disagreement there, but that's okay.
I will say that as far as pay-per-views go, the excitement for the 5 fights on the card, I would put Drickus, that card, underneath it in terms of excitement, but I can't think of any other pay-per-views that I would say are less exciting than those two. But we'll see how the rest.
I feel
of the
like
year...
that more, Jake. I think that speaks more to the fact that so many of these are in fact very stacked.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that this one is truly weak, but it's weak compared to what the UFC can also put on.
Yeah,
but if you take this fight off it, I mean, Eric, what happens when you take this fight off there? There's only one title fight that you're not particularly interested in. What does that do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean that's fair. I would love to see like I honestly I thought Bo Nickal should have been pushed back to this one. Again, I'm playing matchmaker here, and I'm not talking about schedules or whatever. There's a whole lot of things that go into this. I'm just saying I would rather have Bo Nickal on this card as the co-main event for a 3-round fight, and then have Valentina have headlined. Maybe not last week, but or the week or a future week. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Agree to disagree.
Before we wrap this up, we haven't mentioned this yet, and I think it's absolutely worth saying. Similar to how in the main, there's a lot of similarities with the main event and the co-main event. Similar how there is this whole looming storyline over that. There is one to this one as well. If Valentina wins this fight, we're setting up a pretty crazy champ fight for Zhang Weili that I'm not sure would happen if Manon wins the title. I mean, you could make the argument, why wouldn't you, if Zhang has earned her shot to go up? But I am curious if either of you have any thoughts on whether or not that would make sense. Scott, I'll go with you just real quick before we round this out.
I think absolutely you can go with it either way, frankly, no matter who wins, if that's what they want to do with Zhang Weili. But also, I think that if, let's say, Manon Fiorot gets a victory here, as long as it's not an absolute beatdown, which I have a hard time seeing that scenario play out, probably we're just going to get it run back again.
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's boring.
And
I
with
hope that
that,
doesn't happen.
with that, let's go into our rating. I'll go first again. You know what? I have I'm the moderator, so I'll do
You
it.
do it.
So I would say from a competitive standpoint, 5. Right? There are no two people at strawweight, or not strawweight. Excuse me, flyweight. There are no two people
Mhm.
at flyweight that should be competing for this title other than these two right now. So that I don't even have to say anymore. It's a 5. From an entertainment standpoint, I'm gonna give this one a 3. I'm gonna give it a 3, just because I don't know. I mean, like you said, the decision is what, minus 300 around there. Some of these women's title fights, and Valentina as well. I'm beating around the bush a little bit, but sometimes they just become into a grind fest. I'll just say that much. I'll let you guys disagree, but yeah, that's where I stand on that.
Look, I'll go next. And so your rating is you got an 8 out of that, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes it sound like you're more interested than it is, but not necessarily, right? I am going to say absolutely, it's a sporting 5, 100%. That's what, like you said, 1 versus 2. How can we really argue? Especially this is a very clear 1 and a very clear 2. We're not even talking about maybe they're 2, maybe they're 3. There's no one else, right? Entertainment wise, I'm gonna go a little lower. I'm gonna go with the 2. I can see ways where this gets pretty fascinating, but also I think at its peak, we're still probably talking about a fascinating chess match more than, maybe a thrilling battle. I hope to be wrong. There's certainly permutations where that happens, but I think the more likely scenarios, maybe it's a little competitive, maybe it's a little interesting, but also it might just be, semi-point fighting style. So I'm gonna go with a 2. So I give it a 7 then. Where do you at, Eric?
I'll push back a little bit on the yeah, I'll push back on the 5. I'm gonna go with I would I'm gonna go with a 4 on the matchup, and the only reason I'm gonna say that is because I'm gonna reserve the 5 for Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko. I think that is a 5. I think that I'm gonna reserve 5s. Like I'm gonna be very strategic about giving out a 5 in any category. So I'm gonna go 4 there, and then entertainment value. I mean, we could easily get a 1 here, so I'm going to go with a 1. Look, Valentina's last 3 fights have gone, last 3 of her last 4 fights, excuse me, have gone to decision. And the last 2 particularly haven't really been interesting. One of them was a draw, which is super disheartening as a fan. You don't want that. So you had a draw, another decision. It was interesting when she got submitted with the face crank. That was fun. But then the one before that against Talia Santos was a split decision, competitive, but again, not super entertaining. Valentina, again, she has that awesome head kick knockout. She's done a lot of crazy things in the octagon. I just think she's getting a little older and isn't going to be able to do that consistently going forward. So I'm going to go with a 1, and you're looking at a 5.
All right. Where does that leave us, Scott?
We're at a 6.7. So actually, this does exceed the main event on our rating system. But this will be something that we can track throughout the year and kind of see, hey, how did we feel about the big fights that the UFC made? And maybe we can rank them from there in terms of our anticipation.
Alrighty, thank you for that, Scott. So, something we had talked about somewhat recently, it was a couple episodes ago, I think, was the ticket prices rising. As far as tickets for 315, we've seen the pictures come off of Ticketmaster, a lot of open seats. I'll go with Eric. I'll go with you first. What do you make of tickets not selling for this fight? Is it the lackluster card that you were talking about before, or is it these ticket prices? What's going on here?
Well, so okay, Bilal Muhammad not a draw. We know that. The UFC knows that, right? The UFC doesn't want him to be the champion either. Um, right. So we'll just get that out of the way. Nobody wants to watch Bilal Muhammad as a headliner. So we'll start there, and then we'll finish with the UFC brags about their gates. There's like, oh, record gate, record gate, record gate. Now, record gates are cool, but record gates don't mean that you're buying more tickets, right? It's simple supply and demand economics. You know, the way like there will be a perfect price that they're going to try to reach, but as it sits right now, it seems like their prices are higher than the demand, right? They're trying to sell it for too much money. Bilal Muhammad isn't worth the price of admission more often than not. In terms of excitement, in terms of the way he sells the fights, he's just not that interesting. Even if he wins, he's going to get booed. Even if he wins by finish, he's probably going to get booed. So that's just how it goes fans are fickle. Also, like, and look, not for nothing, and we'll talk about this when we go over like our fight assignment. But people boo grapplers, and he is a volume grappler at this point. So, and I hate that. I don't agree that we should be booing grapplers. This is MMA. This is how it goes. It's not just if you want to watch Power Slap, go watch Power Slap. But fans are a little fickle, so that's just how it goes. They don't want to see grapplers. He is a grappler that doesn't go for finishes, I think, more importantly. So I think that's where we're at with it. I think Bilal's just not a draw, and their ticket prices are just too expensive.
Anything to add, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the fact that yes, I think especially for this particular event, we're looking at a situation where the price, they overpriced it. That's what it comes down to. We're in Canada. We're in Montreal for the first time in a little while. These are different fans as well, and they're used to seeing George Rush St. Pierre when they used to come to town all the time, and they showed out for him. And if they had a big Canadian star, you bet they would show out no matter who they were fighting. But we don't really have those Canadian stars anymore, and I don't know how much that's enticing the Quebecois of Montreal to come out. I think it's a problem for them. I mean, we'll hear what Dana says as far as those gate numbers after this one, right? He always likes to report those. We'll find out. But I'll tell you this, like I was just looking on StubHub, and you can find a ticket on there for roughly $120. It's
That's
not
crazy.
even close to what they priced it at. So why would anyone buy some new tickets when there's that cheap circulating still?
I'll bet you $10 that Dana White says that they sold out after the event, even if they didn't. No matter what, he's saying that they sold out. $10.
We'll see.
I think, I couldn't disagree with that bet. Alrighty, so to round out UFC 315, we talked about the main event, talked about the co-main event. There's some other fights in there that are pretty good. So, guys, why don't you tell me what you like? Scott, we'll go with you first. What's another fight that you think people should look out for?
Well, let me highlight Alexa Grasso against Natalia Silva. I'm curious to see who comes out of this one because no matter what happens in our championship fight here, we have something possibly on the table for them. If it is not Zhang Weili, we've got Alexa Grasso potentially going against a fresh opponent in Manon Ferrot if she's able to win, or we've got this fourth fight that frankly we don't really need right now, but there could be a demand for it later to finish out this quadrilogy of fights that are tied 1-1-1. Against Valentina Shevchenko. Then there's also Natalia Silva, who's been moving on up. So I'm curious to see what comes out of that one.
Eric, how about you?
Yeah, Daniel Santos versus Zhang Yong Lee. That's a super interesting fight. It's the second fight on the card. Usually I don't go this early down in the card. But Daniel Santos trains with Charles Oliveira. I expect him to come out here, look way improved is my expectation. And I honestly just don't think that Zhang Yong Lee moves his head enough in the striking exchanges. So I'm super interested to see what Daniel Santos looks like. I think that this is a big fight for him. Again, second fight on the card. It's ESPN prime time, 6 o'clock on ESPN. So this is a big fight for them. And I know it's the second fight on the card, but these prelims are pretty solid.
Alrighty, and with that, Eric, I'm going to throw it right back to you for your 3 bets in 3 minutes. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it. So 3 bets, 3 minutes. We're going to start with the main event here, and I'm not going to be breaking news here. Bilal Muhammad is a pressure forward grappler. He loves the jab. He loves to strike, and he loves to back you up against the cage. Now, Jack Della, the money has really come down in on Jack, and part of me thinks that it's just about hatred for Bilal from the fans. They are not a big fan of him. We know that. But I'm going to take Bilal here by decision. It's plus 110 that you could still get. I just don't see a roadmap for Jack unless he lands a finish, and Bilal's only been finished once in his career. He's done a really good job of avoiding heavy strikes. Jack Della started really slow against Gilbert Burns, who's kind of washed. So, from my perspective, I just don't see. I thought Jack was lucky to get that win over Gilbert Burns as a big favorite, and then he immediately gets a title shot from there. I'm going to take Bilal Muhammad here. I think he wins kind of comfortably. 50-45, probably going to be boring, but it'll make you some money. And then we'll go to the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko. I know we talked about her potentially having lost a step. And I think that's undeniable, right? That just happens with age, especially not only that, she's fought a ton. She's taken a good amount of damage. I think that Valentina is the more skilled fighter, and I think that she's the most skilled fighter at the division generally over the course of her career. For me, I expect her to win the striking exchanges here, and I think that there's a path to grappling as well for her. So for me, I think that money has gone against Shevchenko here in this fight. I'm gonna go Valentina here, money line plus 118. I think that she gets it done here. I think it even could be a finish if she's able to get some ground and pound in or win by submission. So I'm gonna go Valentina there. Let's go last fight here. I talked about Daniel Santos. I like him. I'm not going to make that one of my picks, but I do like him. But let's go also in the prelims. Ian Kudalaba is fighting, and I'm probably going to butcher the name here, but Modestas Bukauskas. All right, there we go. Bukauskas by decision here, plus 310. Kudalaba, we've seen him make some, I'll say this gently, we've seen him make some mistakes strategically in fights many times in the past, right? Kudalaba, solid striker, definitely comes forward. And, Bukauskas isn't great in terms of the striking defense. We know that. But here's my thing when it comes to this. Bukauskas doesn't make mistakes on the ground. And Ian Kudalaba, he goes for takedowns and constantly finds himself on his back. And I think that is an issue that he hasn't really rectified. We've seen him quit, honestly, in some fights when he gets frustrated on the ground. So I'm going to take Bukauskas here by decision, plus 310. And those are your 3 bets in 3 minutes. And I was out last week with the flu. I'm going to have to look and see what I had the week before. But yeah.
There we go. Thank you, Eric, for rallying for us this week. By the way, I hope you're feeling a lot better. It seems like it. So you
look sprightly.
You're glowing. Okay. Alrighty, thank you for that, Eric, once again. Let's wrap this up with the event rating. Scott, what do we have for UFC 315?
Oh boy, this is actually a pretty strong one. I know you guys said that you're not super hyped for the 5-fight collective on the pay-per-view card, but this actually averages out to an 89 event rating. It's very stacked in terms of the level of ranked fighter. Remember, that's what we're talking about here. We're not necessarily talking about whether you're hyped for this or whether you think it's going to be a fun fight or not. This is a situation, once again, where we see the UFC putting a lot of upper level talent, even at the lower parts of the card. Most of these guys and gals, they're top 100, top 50, even top 30 and that kind of thing. We got Jessica Andrade against Jasmine Jasudavicius in the prelims. I mean, that's a top 15 matchup right there. There's a lot of talent on this card. Whether the hype is there, can't tell you. But 89 is a very strong number. If you want top fighters, this is what this is.
Alrighty. I mean, you can't really argue with that. I do concur with that in terms of looking at the card. They're all pretty high up in terms of that regard. Okay, so that is UFC this weekend. Before we take a look at PFL this weekend, let's take a look at UFC last weekend. UFC Des Moines wrapped up Saturday night, and instead of talking about the main event, because I feel like the sort of biggest story about this card was the co-main event, or at least some of the commotion coming off of it and the fallout, was that Bo Nickel does not have an O at the end of his record anymore. He got his first loss fighting Reinier de Ritter, TKO'd via knee to the body, followed up by some punches. But yeah, I mean, listen, it's just a strange scenario. He's gotten a lot of blowback from that, but taking that aside, I guess, what do you look at? What is next for Bo? What do we think is next for him here? Scott, I'll go with you. I don't know if you have any right answers because it's kind of a confusing situation, but I'll let you take it from here.
The right answer is slow down. That's really what it comes down to. Slow Bo down. I think he just needs to be fighting. He needs to fight more often, too. He needs to fight more often, but also slower in the development of fighting ranked and upper level fighters. That's what I would really like to see. Get more fights in, get more activity. A lot of prospects have that. He doesn't really have that, and he clearly isn't quite ready for that. I think you're in a tricky situation with him because now he's a name, but he's also a name that's fallen off. I think a good matchup, a good next step for him could be against Andre Muniz. I would like to see that potentially next. I don't know if that's where they're going to go, but that's somebody at least in the ballpark of maybe who he should be fighting.
Eric, how about you?
I love that call out. The thing about the activity is super concerning to me. It makes me think that the way that he took the damage in that fight was so bad that it made me feel like he hasn't taken a lot of hits in training. So I'm like, would be concerned, like, how much is he actually focusing on MMA and training? I know he has a bunch of partnerships in like social media, Better, the Jake Paul's betting company. They signed him to a big deal. I'm interested to see, like, is he doing this as a fighter or is he doing this as an influencer? Right? We've seen that in the past. I would like to see if Bo is taking this super seriously, you definitely have to slow him down and you give him the Patty the Batty treatment. You cherry pick matchups, give him stuff that, like, against Andre Muniz, we know that he's a better striker in that matchup and he should have the grappling edge on anyone that he fights. So yeah, I would say that Bo Nickel should focus on actually chaining together takedowns in MMA and avoiding strikes. So yeah, you have to slow him down. I like the Andre Muniz call out. Can't think of one off the top of my head, but yeah, that's what I would do.
Alrighty, and of course, Bo Nickel took his loss dealt by Reinier de Ritter. Really quick, and you could sum up a little bit maybe why you make your decision. I'm going to ask you guys, buy or sell Reinier de Ritter, RDR, as the people. Actually, I think that is his official nickname. Eric, buy or sell RDR as a future title contender?
Sell.
Scott?
I'm going to say buy.
Buy. I agree with Scott on this one. I don't know. I thought that he looked pretty great. I haven't seen much of his fights over in one championship. He looked great against Kevin Holland. Sometimes there's a little bit of an asterisk around that because sometimes Kevin Holland just doesn't show up, right? But
hey, he's big and he's got a lot of experience, and we've seen him succeed. I don't see any reason why he can't shoot up there.
He's definitely big. I don't think his striking is good enough to carry him, but that's just me.
Fair enough. Alrighty, and with that, let's just quickly round out this main event. Corey Sandhagen defeating Davison Figueiredo. Technically, TKO. The knee injury kind of caused that whole chain of events to start. He had the 50-50, came up, that knee goes, Davison taps, but is TKO'd in that instance. Sandhagen looks very, very good, but my question, Scott, I'll start with you. Do you think that Sandhagen made a strong enough case for that title shot?
I do. I think I would put him ahead of Peter Yan, but I could actually see, we've already seen some chatter about this, maybe they're going to have those two fight in a rematch before we get the next fight. But frankly, he looked like a world beater. I think that's what you want in a title contender.
Absolutely. For me, I think Sandhagen should get the title. Even if O'Malley beats Merab, I think Sandhagen should get the title shot, but it doesn't seem like the UFC wants to do that. So.
Alrighty, so that is UFC Des Moines wrapped up. We'll see how the rest of that shakes up with all those guys, but let's look ahead to PFL. We got Paul Hughes fighting in Belfast. Scott, let's just run us down through this one.
I mean, there's not much to run down. It's Paul Hughes going against Bruno Miranda in the main event at Belfast. He gets to fight in his own country, but realistically, this is like the only fight that has a whole lot of intrigue on there. There's maybe Lewis McGrillen, who won PFL Europe last year, but otherwise, this is basically a regional card. You could say the same for the PFL MENA card, which is on Friday. The Belfast card is Saturday. These are both afternoon cards for the United States audience, but it doesn't matter because, as far as I can tell, you cannot watch it in America, so it doesn't really matter.
I think that's insane. And I want to watch this fight.
PFL just stays PFL. Like, might as well just go become LFA. I mean, there's a joke.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they do have the Russian links, I suppose. So
we're not advertising.
Not advertising. I'm just getting the no. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Scott, we have an event rating for PFL as well, right? I imagine it's not great.
You know what? We have two PFL event ratings, and they are both deep in the negatives. I don't actually have a real number, but these are far below anything we see in the UFC or have ever seen. This is entirely regional level, even when you account for the Paul Hughes fight, which is unfortunate. But look, if you like Paul Hughes, you're curious about this fight anyway. That's really all it is. It's curiosity.
How are you going to build him as a star if you can't even watch him in America? But I digress. We got to move on.
Yeah. Alrighty, Scott, we are tight on time, so let's get this one wrapped up soon if we can. Let's go over my homework. I'll just tell you what I thought about GSP versus Fitch. Listen, this is the first old GSP fight I'd watched, and the guy looked absolutely dominant. Scott, I remember you saying that John Fitch, he really was like a number one contender fighting GSP. And
Unquestioned number one contender at this point.
16 fight win streak going into this.
He made GSP made John. I mean, dude, that first round, that's a 10-8. Like, that is as 10-8 as a 10-8 can get. It was
a mean old 10-8 there, yeah.
Yeah, it was a bad situation to be John Fitch, and yeah, GSP looked absolutely phenomenal. I can understand why people consider him in the GOAT conversation.
Yeah, I'll say Rogan was pretty funny there when Fitch ends up on top of GSP at one point. GSP hadn't been on his back for more than 2 minutes, I think, up until that point in his career. And Rogan's like, okay, this is a good spot for John Fitch. And then John sitting in guard tries to pass into half and gets swept. And Rogan's like, oh, that is terrible for Fitch, and then proceeds to get annihilated in the third round. And it's like, yep, that's about right.
All right.
Masterclass GSP. That's a little taste for you there, Jake.
Love it. Okay, so what do we have coming up next week for our homework?
Your next homework assignment, we're going to stay in the welterweight division here, but we're going to go farther back. UFC 34, Matt Hughes against Carlos Newton, the first time they met. This is a very fascinating fight for a lot of reasons, but realistically, there's one thing that everyone remembers this fight for, and you guys are going to be very intrigued to see this. I can't wait to talk about it next week.
Awesome. I can't wait either. I'm intrigued to see what happens. And what's going on this week in MMA, historically?
This week in MMA, we're going to go back only just 5 years to May 9th, 2020. That was UFC 249, and it was what brought the UFC back from the post-COVID break and basically brought back major pro sports in this country as well. Stacked card. It was one of the better cards that we've really had in recent memory. Actually gets an event rating of 97. We had the Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson. We had Henry Cejudo against Dominic Cruz. We had Francis Ngannou just flattening Jairzinho Rozenstruik in 20 seconds. This was an excellent card top to bottom, and it was a great way to welcome back sports.
We love that. I mean, all the things that have happened in between then, it feels like a lifetime ago. But I think that is it for this episode of Against the Cage. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. If you at home like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content. Guys, I will see you next week. Thank you so much for coming on.
Give your own event ratings. Give your own fight card ratings in the comments, because I want to know. I want to know if my lower ratings are right, because I think I.
Alrighty, catch you
Enjoy
guys later.
315, guys.